ERP systems in general, they are very legacy, traditional, right? They have legacy code bases. They may not have these workflows built as part of their platform. Generally, the way these workflows were built, they followed a philosophy called asynchronous communication. In general, when you look at transactional cases, it's very hard to mimic the transactional control using asynchronous workflow.
Growing a business requires a holistic approach that extends beyond sales and marketing. This approach needs alignment among people, processes, and technologies. So if you're a business owner, operations, or finance leader looking to learn growth strategies from your peers and competitors, you're tuned into the right podcast. Welcome to the WBS Podcast, where scalable growth using business systems is our number 1 priority. Now, here is your host, Sam Gupta.
Hey everyone, welcome. And this is the second round of the dual entry review. We had done this review, I guess, a couple of weeks back. And that was the first half. So we are going to do a quick recap of that. And then we have a lot more to cover, obviously, if you're including dual entry as part of your selection. On that note, we are going to start with our quick intros, and then we'll get right into the topic. Sam Gupta, principal here at Elevate IQ. Elevate IQ is the independent vendor-agnostic technology advisory firm, and I'm also host of WBS Rocks. On that note, which order do we go? Andy, do you want to go next?
It doesn't matter. I'm fine. My name's Andy Pratico. I'm involved with ERP software for manufacturing companies. I've been doing that all my life. I've worked with manufacturers all over North America, and I also teach people how to uncover the truth about ERPs before they purchase. And hopefully that's going to help the this horrible statistic that I keep reading about dissatisfaction reduced a little bit. And that's what I do.
Is that AI native, Andy, the statistics that you're talking about?
Or yes, I am. And actually, as long
legacy?
As you know the acronym AI, it stands for Andy Intelligence.
Andy Intelligence. Yeah, man, that's amazing. I mean, are you changing your last name as well now, Andy?
I am. Yeah.
Okay, Shrestha, do you want to go
So
next?
it really is machine learning then.
Yeah. Machine learning, you're right.
Yeah. Shrestha, do you want to go next?
Yeah, thank you, Sam. Hi, everyone. My name is Shrestha Das, and I'm working as an industry research analyst at Elevate IQ, and really glad to be here again.
Okay, amazing. Thank you so much for being here, Shrestha. Phil?
Hi, I'm Phil Kerper. Great to be here. I'm the managing director of Ringling Business Solutions. We're leveraging decades of CEO experience to help our clients get good returns on their technology investments. So again, great to be here.
Amazing. Thank you so much for being here, guys. And again, if you're in the audience, we would love to hear your experiences and a little bit about you. If you feel comfortable posting that, where you are joining from, if you feel comfortable sharing your LinkedIn profile, obviously, we would love to see that as well. And if you have any sort of stories, anecdote, whatever you can share related to this platform, if you have experience, again, we would love to see that. On that note, let's start with the presentation. I'm going to share my screen. Just give me a second here. Just 1 second. Let's see if can somebody give me a thumbs up if you guys are able to see my screen right now.
You bet.
Okay. Perfect. So guys, again, we are going to do a quick recap of what we had covered in the first session. So we will not be covering everything. If you feel a little lost, then you need to go back and check the first episode. We are probably going to link as part of this episode, and the promotions that we had done for this episode did include the link for the first episode. But again, if you're not able to find, just reach out to us, or you can head to Elevate IQ events and webinar page. There you are going to find the first. Just look for the part 1 based on dual entry, and you should be able to find that. You can also subscribe to our newsletter. That's where we announce these reviews as well as any other webinars that we conduct. So again, quick recap on DualEntry. They are AI native platforms, and we have reviewed several of them now. So their positioning on our quadrant is going to be very similar to any other AI native platforms. That's what we had discussed last time as well as part of this review. I would say, positioning on our map, and this is the category map that we publish, and this is really between ERP and FP&A is where they are positioned. So we discussed that in the last episode. In terms of our benchmarking, we are benchmarking them on tier 7, which is closer to a lot of different ERP systems that have taken any sort of shortcuts. They are going to be primarily GL accounting focused. That's where we are benchmarking them. Again, this could move in the future once they advance and develop their capabilities a little bit more. We reviewed the comparison as well. There are certain advantages of DualEntry platform, and that are going to be very similar to the other leading AI native platforms as well. So we discussed that. We'll keep moving here. These were some of the stories that we had covered. And again, I think that the major story is that they are very well funded. They have done some partnerships from the payroll perspective. We saw some trends related to HCM, that they are partnering with several different HCM providers, and that is a signal that their primary target market is probably going to be service-centric businesses, which is tech, media, etc. We discussed that. We discussed some more things related to their data model, etc. Some of the concerns that we had, some more partnerships related to payroll. And again, those payroll vendors were aligned in the SaaS and technology ecosystem. Some more comments related to their funding. And again, this is probably the newest platform in the market as far as the AI native platforms go. They have raised a lot. Their valuation is probably going to be over $1 billion right now. So obviously, this is a company and the solution that you cannot afford to ignore. Then some more things that we reviewed. And again, I mean, is it going to be an accounting suite or ERP is a question at this point of time. We don't know. But for the most part, they are probably going to be treated as more of the accounting solutions based on the kind of layers they have. And even they go back and forth in their marketing materials as well with their claims, whether they are ERP or accounting suite. Depending upon how you define ERP, some people might call even the accounting systems as ERP. So there is always a very thin line there as far as our scope and definition go. We generally avoid calling accounting systems as ERP because they are natively different. That's not a right and fair comparison. So that's why we avoid that. Now, this is where we were when we ended our last session. So we'll continue, from this point onwards. So in this particular case, I mean, we are looking at many different screens. And at least with DualEntry, you have a lot more screenshots. They are publishing several videos and they are showcasing their capabilities when we look at Relate. And this is the point that I had, Phil, from your perspective, that I could not find the real demo or screenshots. And sometimes it's very hard for us as well as for customers as well. If they are trying to compare, if they are trying to review these platforms, they need to be able to see, how your screens look, how your APIs look. And if you are going to be a modern startup like this, and our expectation would be that you publicize some of those things, at least the APIs. With some platforms, they are not available, which is just shocking. The DualEntry, obviously, you have a lot more information available, so we are able to talk a lot more. Do you guys have any comments by any chance?
Yeah, I'll just add to that. I just think that's a real plus for these guys, as young as they are, that they're this transparent, both on their APIs that you can get in there and look at what's really going on, as we'll see in a minute, as well as screenshots. I mean, that allows a lot more, self-analysis and alignment without having to go through a formal demo, which often just turns into a sales pitch.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Phil, for that comment. And here, the kind of screens that you're looking at. One thing that you are going to notice, these screens are going to appear very familiar or similar to any of these SaaS platforms. If you are familiar with maybe HubSpot is probably the best example, just because they are probably the category or the software. They really started the real SaaS movement. Or Shopify. You can take Shopify example as well, just because they are very modern. The way they developed their platform, they sort of are the trailblazer, I would say, for the SaaS movement. And generally, if you look at, I don't know when webhooks came along overall from the technology footprint perspective, I would say somewhere in 2015. I don't know if you guys have a little bit more background in that. That's where what is that called, the single page HTML movement became really big, I guess, from the SaaS perspective. And that's where web applications became really big. And that was the time when a lot of business software started moving to cloud. Before that, it was just not possible because the kind of development model that you had from the technology perspective, that was really limited. Okay, so these workflows are very common. You go across the categories in terms of any SaaS software that you might be using right now, whether it is HubSpot, Shopify, anything from the e-commerce perspective, marketing tech perspective, HR tech. They all have utilized some sort of workflows. ERP systems in general, they are very legacy, traditional, right? They have legacy code bases. They may not have these workflows built as part of their platform. Generally, the way these workflows were built, they followed um, a, a philosophy called asynchronous communication. In general, when you look at transactional cases, it's very hard to mimic the transactional control using asynchronous workflow. When you look at web-centric workflows in general, with them, it's much easier to accomplish some sort of notification, event-centric, communication that you are trying to accomplish, and then you have to take some sort of action. Generally, it works for the sales, CRM, HR-centric workflows, employee-centric workflows, where you don't need to guarantee transactional integrity. Okay, transactional integrity is where the real play is. Generally, for business software, for ERP-like applications, you are looking at the real CRUD workflow, and that needs to be synchronous. So again, that's where the real difference is overall in terms of the workflow patterns that modern or SaaS web applications promote, but they just don't have the same transactional integrity that your traditional applications or ERP systems are going to have. And that's why some of the ERP systems, they have not rewritten completely to the newer technologies. We still have, I would say, maybe 70% of the workloads are still very traditional. Even the newer ones, I mean, they are very restricted in terms of what they can do, just because these things are enforced more from the technology perspective. Again, these business applications, the transactional applications that you have, they are slightly different than the other category of applications. So that was a little brief in terms of how workflows work, but these workflows are very similar in the AI native applications as well. The only difference is now you have the power of AI nativeness, so you can do a lot more things with this. Okay, so you had the asynchronous communication. So what you are doing is, rather than waiting for that transaction, you are firing multiple requests, from your web or from your users, and then you are processing them as a queue, as opposed to processing them in the synchronous manner. Here, from the workflow perspective, again, this mindset is going to be very similar. It's just that you are going to have AI speed as well. I don't know if the workflows that you have in the AI native world are going to be synchronous in nature. And that's where we were really concerned about the SaaS applications as well, if they can replicate the same workflows as an ERP application. Now we are going to be even more concerned about this, because this is all going to be very asynchronous, event-centric communication, and they are taking a lot of shortcuts in the background. And that's why generally you don't get the same outcome that you would expect from the ERP perspective. When we have any sort of custom developed application that we develop on top of ERP, we struggle with these workflows in mimicking the same transactions. That would be very easy when you look at any of the database centric applications or database driven workflows, and that's the foundation of an ERP in our mind. Any questions, comments?
So Sam, comment question. So it would seem to me like you mentioned HubSpot, and there's actually a comment coming up later on a review that the workflows were very similar to HubSpot, and they seem to get along very well. So it would seem to me that customers who bought this, who implemented this, likely would have those types of CRM or other partner software so they're similar. But what if they don't? I mean, does it get real clunky if you have a more traditional CRM and then you're trying to have this be underneath it and have those two workflows mesh?
Great question, Phil.
Yeah, great question. So generally, when you talk about SaaS to SaaS integration, they are easier. Okay, they don't require as much implementation budget, and the reason for that is number one, they are following the webhooks model. So the technology, implementation model, I guess, that you have, or technology method that you are using to integrate those two is far easier. That's why everything feels so easy with SaaS. Okay. Now, when you combine SaaS with a traditional applications are going to have slightly different data model. And then you require translating the data model. And that's why it takes forever to integrate these applications. And they were making comments about, hey, it's so hard to integrate NetSuite. It's so hard to integrate with NetSuite is because NetSuite, what they are trying to do is they are trying to implement the real world hierarchy, the way the business is supposed to work. And you need those hierarchy, you need those constraints, with respect to ERP. Otherwise, you will not be able to model the enterprise. You can take shortcut to reduce the implementation time to make sales easy, but you will not get the same outcome. And this is the concern that we had with majority of the SaaS applications, that SaaS applications would not be able to replicate the same behavior as ERP. That has always been concerned. So Phil, to answer your question, when you mix traditional application with the newer application, would that be harder? Yes, it would be harder. Okay. Now, are these companies not going to have those modern applications? It's very rare at this point of time. I would say majority of the companies that I know, they are going to have some sort of point solutions. They are going to use CRM. They are going to use an ACM solution. So they are going to have modern application. I don't know a company that is not going to utilize some sort of modern SaaS application. They have a role to play in the architecture, but again, their role is not necessarily transactional integrity. Their role is more collaboration, gathering data from different channels, communicating with those channels. That's a very different role from the application perspective than a transactional application, processing application, where you have to reconcile everything down to a penny. And if you are not able to do that, then you are going to run into issues. And again, I think we were reading some comments related to Relate as well, that you can pretty much delete anything you want. Okay, you can do that in QuickBooks as well, and that's why people who have accounting background or auditors, they hate it, because that's not how accounting is supposed to work, right? So that's where I guess we are talking about when you look at the real database constraints. That's where the real problem is, and now they are mimicking these workflows using asynchronous transactions. In my mind, that would be a real concern for me. We had real concerns, with SaaS applications as well, whether you would get the same behavior or not. So now this is going to be even more with AI native applications in our mind.
Yeah, I think you're on to a really core topic for someone to dig into. And even if it's a little harder to put this with a more traditional partner, if you will, you're still taking what you're calling shortcuts in the data structure and not building that in a traditional way. What are some, you mentioned that maybe you mentioned data inquiry, and particularly maybe the transactions aren't balancing to a perfect penny, which obviously in accounting is an important piece. What other implications in not building out that database in a traditional way? By taking those shortcuts, if you will.
Yeah, great question, Phil. And so it's not that you will not be able to reconcile. You will have to work hard to reconcile. The kind of behavior that you get in QuickBooks, where you are not going to have the data integrity, where you enter a transaction and everything is done for you, meaning your transactions are hopefully going to be reconciled. You are not going to enter anything crazy that will require 100 hours of accounting time or accountant's time to reconcile those variances, to find out, okay, what's going on here. This is probably going to be wild, wild west, because you have removed a lot of those database rules, and you are going to have a lot of data integrity issues. Now, from the AI perspective, AI can query junk. Okay, it can literally query junk, and when I say junk, mean like the data junk. Okay, so you don't need to have any sort of structure with your data. So AI is really powerful, and that's how they are able to hide it. That okay, you can correct these things faster because you are AI agents are going to be far smarter as well. But AI agents also have limitations. Okay, they hallucinate. They have very short memory. They don't like very complex problems. They can do very simple things, generally in one step. Okay, so that's where the real problem is right now. These guys are able to mimic this behavior. When you look at these reports, and some of these reports, and I always talk about this, right? If you look at the ERP consulting world, the whole ERP consulting industry, I would say that's probably $1 trillion even today, was built around these reports. It used to take months of effort to build these reports, and now with AI native systems, you can probably build these reports in one command and one prompt and one click, which is obviously extremely powerful. But again, AI is powerful, but what they have done to work around AI capabilities is removing those hierarchies, because AI does not like hierarchies. AI is not a big fan of hierarchies. If you put too many business rules, AI just does not appreciate that. Okay, and that's why AI does not like ERP architecture, ERP systems. Sorry, Phil.
Yeah. No, so I think if I'm looking to purchase this for my company, then my reaction to that would be, okay, what controls do I have in place, or maybe non-AI generated, or at least AI generated and audited reporting that I can catch the problems before they get too far down the line. In other words, can I mitigate this by putting some additional auditing steps, reporting steps, monitoring what's going on, versus just believing blindly what AI is telling me in a totally AI generated report? Does that sound practical as a response to this?
Yeah. So again, the best analogy is going to be you are creating a building on a weak foundation, and this is the sense that everybody in the accounting world had when they looked at QuickBooks. That QuickBooks is not scalable, and that's why everybody wanted slightly more control. I would say controlled data set, so that you don't have to mine junk. I guess again, I'm using that word. So here now, what AI can do, AI can mine number one junk, and secondly, it can also correct junk if you need to. But again, that's going to be human in the loop. You need to develop those rules so that AI can correct if you are going to have problems. So what you are doing is you have really weak foundation right now. Okay, the way this data set is created, or the way these applications are designed, you are creating a building on top of that, because creating a building on top of a weak foundation has become easier from the AI perspective. And tomorrow, if you are going to have issues, you are not going to have the as much maintenance cost, because fixing those is easier. I don't know if but your foundation is still weak. Foundation has not changed. You have intentionally created weak foundation because you claim that, okay, you can expedite the creation of building, and that's that's helpful from the sales perspective, because you can claim that you can do these things in 24 hours. But again, your foundation is weak, is the point I'm trying to make.
I think that's a really, really good explanation. Thank you.
Of course. Thank you so much, Phil, for great discussion there. If you guys have any other comments, I can take those, or I can keep moving.
The comment I want to make, Sam, is every time I attend a podcast with you, I'm always blown away.
And the same thing is with me as well, Andy. Whenever I attend with you, I'm blown away as well. Thank you so much for this partnership. Okay, any other comments, guys? Okay, so I'll move to the next slide. I think we discussed that one a lot. So now in this particular case, now what they have done, and again, this is the movement that came from Palantir. And I don't know whether you guys know Palantir or not. Palantir was one of the hottest startup on Wall Street. They probably have multi-billion-dollar valuation at this point of time. Everybody wants to put money in Palantir, and if you are not putting, I would highly recommend that you do that, because they are going to make real money. Okay, and they changed something. And Palantir, Snowflake, Databricks. You look at these, companies that became really giant enterprise software companies. They changed things from the industry perspective. So one of the things that Palantir launched, and some people argue that, hey, Palantir is an ERP system. Palantir is not an ERP system. Okay, what Palantir did differently overall from their model perspective is they introduced security rules and permissions that generally belong to transactional applications like ERP inside data. So now what you can do is you can do controlled access of data. So it's not going to be as much wild west. Okay. And now I like to compare these platforms, AI native platforms, with either FP&A or something like Palantir, which is, in my mind, are more of the data platforms. They are not meant to be transactional platform. So these guys are introducing these security layers as well, but these security layers are not necessarily comparable with ERP systems, even if they might look very similar on paper. Okay, so here obviously you can do permissions based on your entity. You can have different roles. If you look at Microsoft, SAP, all of these systems, NetSuite, they all are going to have very similar permission set. But again, the outcome is going to be different. Okay, here you can do the controlled access of agents. Here you can do controlled access of how you want to publish the data set, but the outcome that you are achieving here is going to be more of the data platform, not necessarily the transactional integrity, transactional consistency. Okay, now these guys are trying to do inventory three-way match, which seems to be after the fact. It's almost like you are doing this in the BI layer as opposed to doing it in the transactional layer. Generally, your goal should be, from the ERP perspective, is that you don't have to do as much matching. You don't want to create as much variance. And the reason for that is because when you create, the cost increases. So in this particular case, your total debugging time has reduced. So you can do much faster reporting, you can do much faster reconciliation, but that does not mean that you have solved the real issues. And those are going to be the foundational issues that you have from the transactional integrity perspective. Questions, comments? No? Okay, I'll keep moving here. But I mean, they are able to mimic a lot of these behaviors. For example, inventory three-way match, which looks very promising, that they are able to do it so fast, even though this company and the application is literally like, what, 6 months old? And they have built all of these workflows, which is just
What do you
fascinating.
mean by they're able to do a three-way match so fast? What does that mean?
Like they have the capabilities as part of their software and they are able to enable those workflows.
Well, sure, but isn't that pretty common with most systems out there?
Yeah, but I mean, it used to cost $100 million, but I don't think these guys have invested $100 million.
Oh, to develop it.
Yeah, because they literally have 10 employees right now.
I understand.
And the functionality is very comparable to your, SAPs or NetSuites of the world, which is what is mind blowing, that you can do these things very fast and you can literally create your ERP right now. And that's what these guys are trying to argue, that you don't have to buy these traditional ERP systems, because if you want, you can create your own. You don't need to change your business processes. Change management is always the trickiest topic with most companies. So you can utilize these. You don't have to change anything. But if you really look at from the business perspective, okay, business outcome perspective, you will never get business value unless you fix the foundation of the business. Foundation of the business is where the problem is. Technology is an enabler. But unless you fix those issues, the foundational issues that you have from the business perspective, you're not going to get much value out of it. Sure, I mean, your maintenance is faster. In my building example, you can create building faster, but again, you are operating on a weak foundation.
Thank you.
My observation on the three-way match is how it made their priority list. I mean, it's a feature that most ERPs have for sure in inventory management systems, but it's not used by all the clients. They can choose to use three-way match or just go with a traditional receiving process. Right. These types of companies, someone must have asked for it, right? So maybe that implies they listen to their customers.
So for those companies, Phil, this software is going to be gold, because they don't want to learn or implement why they need to clock in those materials as well as hours. Why do they need to fill their timesheet? Why do you even need timesheet, I guess, in the company? So now these guys can argue that, okay, you don't need all of that. Okay, with us, we will reconcile your inventory without requiring you to clock all of those transactions. So that's a real power. But what they are doing is they are literally creating a report and they are reconciling using a report, then gathering the real data from the users, which is what reconciles your books and the way accounting is supposed to be done, I guess. So we are probably going to redefine accounting principles. I don't know if that is going to happen, but there is a possibility based on the power that we have from the AI perspective. Okay, and I don't know how auditors are feeling about it, and if they are convinced that they can do 90% of the cases, accounting companies and auditors, they don't necessarily have as much technical background. So sometimes they are, fascinated by what is possible here. but I guess, I mean, they just don't have enough experience on these platforms so far, and that's why they are still. We have seen recommendations from accounting folks and CPAs as well that they're comfortable with these platforms. So now one thing that you are going to get is the audit trail as well, which is mind blowing because a lot of traditional ERP systems implementing audit trail becomes very difficult. With AI, that's a natural process. Okay, the way AI works. So even though, and again, this is a change in mindset, right? So traditionally you had sort of audit trail, but you had to do a lot to get that audit trail. You did not have audit trail from the technical standpoint. Developers never appreciated the audit trail that was available inside accounting systems, but accountant loved that because it did not have any sort of boilerplate and it was relevant from their perspective. Now this is a very different view. Okay, this is not going to be accounting view, this is going to be development view from the audit trail perspective, but you do have the audit and trail of whatever is happening with your workflows. This includes your agent as well. In most cases, AI native systems are wired to create these audit trails as they perform their duties. So you have complete visibility. As such, you cannot lose anything. But again, the care for the weak foundation is always going to be a question in the net new world. Because obviously there is a real power here. Now they are able to enable some of the very advanced feature, and again, these advanced features were available in very advanced systems. If you look at smaller systems, they did not even have the multi-entity accounting, and these guys already have that. They have and Phil, I mean, if you look at this, you are probably going to appreciate that. Okay, you can unlock each of the subledgers. You can unlock complete books and calendars, and you can reconcile and you can close. So they are mimicking the behavior. They are mimicking the behavior of a very advanced ERP system, which is what is mind-blowing.
The amount of time they've been at this and some of these capabilities is really something.
Yeah. Now, what they have done, and this is very innovative as well, and I love these investors and the kind of ideas that they are able to come up with. So in this case, I mean, like, creating hardware or shipping a physical product is a real barrier. From the investment perspective, from the how you can sort of capture people's behavior is how probably the best definition of this, right? So hardware they are shipping, obviously hardware is amazing. I don't know if SAP ever shipped hardware, even though they had a lot of T codes back in the days. And everybody had to go through like 1,000-page manual to learn SAP, but I don't think they ever shipped hardware. In this particular case, even though they are claiming that the software is easy, but they are still shipping hardware. So I don't know how many companies are going to use, but I mean, in my mind, I think hardware is going to be really beneficial from the vendor perspective, from the investment perspective, because that creates a real friction, because other ERP systems are not going to have a keyboard, and changing a keyboard is much harder than changing your ERP system. I guarantee this. And here you are literally looking at different buttons that are tailored to dual entry. So that's a real friction from the investment perspective. This is a real gold, and that's why they are able to invest $1 billion in this case. There are companies in Silicon Valley, they have launched their own hardware, and the only reason why they want to launch hardware is because software does not create as much friction. Hardware creates much stronger friction, I would say. So that's the mindset from the investment perspective. From the customer perspective, you need to think about this, whether you really want to use it, because then you are going to be so dependent on the software.
Friction in what way, Sam? Oh, I'm sorry, Paul.
I was going to say that is really interesting, because so many industries have been impacted. Take telecommunications, which used to be a hardware industry and now is almost completely a software industry.
Yeah.
And that they're giving that. I wonder if they're leasing it. I wonder how it works, upgrades, everything else. That, like you say, you're creating a relationship with a customer that can really be good, and creating an aftermarket capability. So there's a lot there.
Yeah, I mean, in this particular case, not only you are creating the relationship with the customer, Phil, you are also creating relationship with people's head. You are literally getting into people's head because, again, changing the keyboard is much harder lift in general for most people. It's very, very, very hard to change keyboard, especially if you're used to off those keyboard shortcuts. So from dual entry perspective, if I'm the investor, I want to invest money right now in this company. I would be making a lot more money by investing in this as opposed to just doing ERP consulting. Because from the investor perspective, this is what you want. And they have like the true multi-company functionality, the way you are going to see inside NetSuite, Acumatica, etc. They have those things. It's going to be very comparable functionality. You can review that yourself.
Does that mean multi-company transactions, or does that mean just consolidation and eliminations?
So multi-company is another marketing term, I would say, Andy, and people don't understand how deep multi-entity functionality goes. And even the systems that may have the real multi-entity functionality, they may still be very limited. Okay, when I define this, there are going to be at least 1,000 different, functional pieces that are going to be relevant from the multi-company perspective. So whether are you doing just the multi-company accounting, which is a different process than multi-entity operations. And
Right.
even if you are doing multi-entity operations, how connected those operations are is going to be a question, right? So for example, let's say we have seen scenarios where the company is going to be literally, and Phil, you are going to love this because they can probably use your help. Okay. So they literally are $30 to $50 million company. They have created, I don't know, 8 legal entities. They want to create the best accounting process. And the way they have created this, just because their data state and system state is so fragmented that every, entity that they have, they might do centralized procurement right here. And they might do billing at the corporate level. Which is a great idea, but from the system perspective, it increases the complexity because what you are doing is you are keeping your transactions in a distributed state, which is going to be your multi-company, the real multi-company functionality. Generally, you want to implement something like shared services when you are probably $1 billion. Then it would make sense to, let's say, capitalize on, I don't know, maybe what is that? Geographic synergies, I guess. Where the cost is going to be lower. Phil, what is the right term, technical term for that? But shared services model
Well,
is.
it's a shared expense. I'm not sure what term you're chasing, but I would say probably even 500 million. But a larger company is going to start to look at shared services, or a company that just has a tremendous amount of, let's say, their service business, but they got 300 employees. They could be smaller, and it makes a ton of sense, like in the HR area, to do shared services on something like that, onboarding, things like that, and then you got to account for that. But I think your operational one is the one that is a true multi-company, to go back to what Andy said. So if I have, in your purchasing, procurement, then let's say you've got 3 of those entities that are receiving and distributing goods, but you're doing a centralized purchase process. And you might even be transferring goods between those depending on demand in a region. That's drop shipping, that's inventory management, that's transactional stuff. Very complicated for an enterprise system to achieve that. Are they capable of achieving that here? I'm not sure.
Yeah, so I don't think all of those complex layers that you are talking about, Phil, that will be achievable here. They don't even have the real transactions. What they have is just the accounting layer. So accounting layer is not necessarily connected with the other subledgers, even though they are claiming that they have some subledgers. But as such, it is very accounting centric. It does not capture.
And that's still a big deal. That's still a big deal.
Yeah.
So I don't want to just step on that, but I think it's important to say if your operation requires real, sharing of goods or sharing of value between entities, it becomes more than an accounting exercise. You probably want to just peel that back a little bit and see what you're really buying here.
Exactly. And that's why, these guys are trying to attack the SaaS and services-centric businesses a little bit more because traditionally, they were not necessarily the ERP-centric industries. Their system state never had the real ERP state. Some companies might do that, but they are probably going to be really big. In general, they kept the accounting completely separate, disconnected from operations because they did not care for the cost view as much. They didn't need MRP, etc. So why do you need ERP? I guess. So that's why, this makes sense for services business, but for product businesses, it's going to be a little challenging. And when you are trying to accommodate many different business models, the things are even more challenging. So again, it's not going to be as diversified as some of the more complex ERP systems. Okay, so here some more comments, unless you guys have any other comment on that slide. So here, this is coming from their APIs, and we again, even personally for me, I had to perform a lot of research to be able to find, okay, what's going on here? How come they are able to achieve this so fast? And is AI really powerful? Can AI really accomplish, what these companies are claiming to accomplish? And that's where I guess, I always like to review the state of data. That's probably an indication for me, whether you'll be able to accomplish the same outcome or not, even if you have expedited your reporting capabilities or they are faster. But again, for me, the relational layers is where the truth of ERP lies. I personally have never seen a system or a state where you can get rid of these relational hierarchies or layers and accomplish the same outcome. So that's where my personal challenge is. And when we look at the data structure, the way they have created, it's a very SaaS centric architecture. It does not have, the kind of layers that I would like to see. So if you are an ERP consultant, for you are probably going to struggle with this. That, okay, where are my parent accounts? Why are these accounts not layered? So all of those questions, I think you will struggle a lot. And by the way, one thing that we like to talk about is data migration risk. Once you have migrated to something like this, then coming to the mainstream ERP would be far more challenging, because you are completely hijacking the state. You are creating something very unique. Obviously, now you can probably use AI to translate that into the mainstream ERP data sets, but you have taken a lot of workarounds here. For example, just the pure normalization of data. And data normalization is where the play is of ERP systems. So here, you have things such as expense account ID, income account ID, deferral account ID, and which is at the item level. So now, where are those layers? You probably need a million layers, right? So from the ERP perspective, so I don't know how you will accomplish those outcomes that any ERP consultant, even if they have implemented just a couple, they would probably expect that, okay, I need those layers. Otherwise, I don't know how I'm going to do my job. So I don't know if you guys have any other comments there, but those hierarchies are super flattened because AI requires you to flatten the hierarchies. AI is really, really good at simplified data structures. And that's why AI was always good at analytics, retrieving data. AI was never sort of good at transactional processing, because that is a very deterministic model. Indeterministic model, AI is far better at. So that's why when you have use cases, applications that are going to be slightly indeterministic in a state, they are far easier to implement using AI. When you are going to have ERP is probably the gold standard for the deterministic state, and that is probably the most complex. So again, I don't think you will accomplish the same outcome. But again, we need to see how the ERP industry is going to evolve overall. And that's where I guess, I'm going to go back to my claims, where we see that the traditional ERP systems, I don't think they'll be disrupted as much. What may be disrupted is the ones that had taken shortcut with their data model to begin with. Those are going to be likes of Odoo. They never had those hierarchies built as part of their data model. So it's very likely that they might get disrupted. And those are the companies, Phil, the companies that you were talking about, that they don't have the real inventory transaction. They don't do a real clocking, and they don't want to learn a clocking. They just don't care for that. So if you are that kind of company, then it's probably going to be okay for you. But once you hit $100 million, $200 million, you will have a hard time with these systems.
And I would think that going in the other direction too, without the account structure example that you have here on the post language on the item level, could create issues if you're trying to set up storefronts, if you're trying to do other things on the front end, and on account management, if you're trying to treat your accounts uniquely because they're a rep or because they're an end user, because they're a distributor or what have you. I would think that hierarchies in those areas might be stumbling points too. Sam, do you agree with that?
So generally, the way these systems are designed, and this is where I like to call out that a lot of these ERP systems, they don't have real ERP consultants or people from the ERP industry who are heading these companies right now. They are very sharp developers. There is no question there. Very sharp technical people. They create technologies, but they don't have the real ERP expertise. But they do have the front end CRM centric experience. If you look at SaaS did maintain those hierarchies. If you look at CRM state did have, let's say, in Salesforce, at least you can find lead, opportunity, account. So you had some structure, even though lead was completely disconnected from your account. They did bare minimum that they needed to process front end side of transaction. But again, from front end perspective, you just don't need the same transactional integrity that you need in a financial system. And there is a fundamental difference between how financial systems work versus how the front end side of systems. So Phil, to your question, there might be some issues from the front end perspective, but I would think that front end is going to be far easier with these systems than the back end.
And just expanding on that one more step, it kind of informs the focus on the SaaS area, because even if you move that to product, for example,
yeah,
and you're selling product on front end systems or managing that, product requires hierarchy, or you're going to really struggle if you try to flatten out that a product hierarchy and subcomponent parts and what have you. Yeah. I would think there's workarounds on that. I'm sure it's doable, but it just seems I can envision it being more complicated.
Yeah, doable, but I mean, how many implications you are going to have and how much effort you need to put in reconciling, debugging is going to be a question. So here, I mean, they have a concept called classification, which is just wonderful, okay? But what they have done is they have broken down the state of real GL. You don't have the real GL structure. Can you believe this? Like the GL is supposed to go in one piece, the whole FP&A. The way FP&A is supposed to work is you are supposed to have all of your account and sub-account together in one piece, in one body. You're not supposed to break them. If you break them, it's not necessarily the real accounting transaction or ERP. In this case, they have broken down that and they have created something called classification. This is great. You can probably mimic the same outcome, but you are not going to get the same transactional integrity that you are going to have with your ERP system. And again, if you don't have the GL structure, the real GL structure, your data is not going to be normalized. You are going to be all over the place with your data. And that's what we are noticing with their API structure. So again, if you simply look at these screens, you might not be able to detect what is happening under the cover, but there are a lot of shortcuts, and that's our concern. Overall, in terms of how they are approaching this, again, if you are treating this system as more of the QuickBooks, great, it works, because QuickBooks never had any rules to begin with. It was not a real database, it was a file structure, okay? But anything more than that is probably going to be a struggle. And here, these are different, classifications, and they have, from the classification perspective, they are like, it's all over the place. Like at the GL layer, you have information stored such as your purchase order, sales order. And generally the way you would create the structure is you want to go to the foundational dependency and then you sort of want to build. So, I mean, that was the foundational engineering principle, I guess. Whether you talk about manufacturing, construction, computer engineering, they have violated all of that in my mind. So I don't know. I mean, I'm not convinced whether you can accomplish the same outcome. But again, my analogy of building, hopefully that hits home for everybody. That's what I am noticing here. Now we have some more, and again, these classifications, if you look at their relationship, so classifications are at what level? These are journal entries, and journal entries have classifications. If you ask them, okay, where are your sub-accounts? Sub-accounts are not there, okay? And this is the JSON structure, and in the JSON structure, that is supposed to be fluid. It's not supposed to be as tight as a relational database, and they have implemented it using this, which means you are not going to have the same transactional integrity. Okay, so in my mind, I look at this as more of the FP&A. So when I talk to these guys and I ask them, okay, are you guys trying to create FP&A? Because the use cases that they are talking about are really FP&A. Okay, they are not necessarily talking about their real transactional capabilities, because if you look at the CFO's finance world, they don't necessarily care for the basic transactional capability. For them, it's supposed to work. But here, this is a very FP&A mindset. The way the system is created, it's not the real account, sub-account, the way sub-accounts are supposed to move, from the transactional integrity perspective. And that would be our concern, I would say. And then you have at the journal entry level, then you have customer information. That makes no sense whatsoever, to be completely honest, from the design perspective, because you are incorporating an upstream dependency at a very foundational level, at a very downstream level, which would be a real concern, because then you are all over the place with respect to your data normalization. And generally, we see these issues when you are talking to a real, just a developer. And traditionally, I mean, we had DBAs. DBAs were far better at database design, but now they have cut down all of those DBAs because people feel that they don't add any value, I guess. So now this is all done with very developer mindset. Okay. And obviously, AI is very good at development. AI is not good at the real databases. The databases where you had technical rules that provided the kind of constraints that business world needed. And that's why databases are so popular in the business world, because that's what runs the business. So here, again, it's all over the place from my perspective. I don't know how you would be able to accomplish the same outcome. I struggle with that.
So this is the one I came to a little different conclusion. The journal entry, a journal entry, and they're even, if you go down record status, fourth from the bottom.
Yeah.
It's allowing you to say that's in draft, that's posted, or it's archived. In other words, these aren't necessarily posted at this point to the ledger. They could be a draft journal entry, and I wouldn't think this data on that level is a problem. It's not on the GL itself yet, but it doesn't really tell me where it's residing either. So this one on the right, the one on the left, I'm with you 100%. The one on the right, I'm not sure that's as big of a problem as it looks like.
So generally, from the development standpoint, Phil, the way this works is the APIs are mapped one-to-one underneath with tables for the most part. Okay. Generally, that's how the majority of these systems are created. So my take on this is going to be, even if this might not be posted, they are probably still going to post with the similar data structure. So the posted may not be any different. And again, they are keeping, I mean, if you look at the data structure relationship, they are keeping customer ID at the GL level, and they are allowing null as customer. I can see why they would do that. But again, the data is going to be fluid all over the place in my mind. You are going to have a lot of problems.
That point is still taken. Yeah. That point is still very well taken. I just wasn't sure, and this is maybe just more than I do, Sam, of whether just because it was pulling on this query request, whether that company and customer and ID were where they were actually residing. I just couldn't really tell.
Yeah, and Phil, I don't know whether you noticed this. I thought you will, notice this one. For example, let's say you had currency at the journal entry level. Generally, if you look at the multi-entity translation or multi-country translation, then you are going to have the whole FX workflow. You need to have like a million rules there in how your currency is translated. And here they are literally sort of have just one currency field, and there is no sort of sense of hierarchy, at the journal entry level, which would be a concern for me. That, okay, what's going on here? Okay, where are my hierarchies? Even if you are representing this in the JSON format, you still need to have those hierarchies. So that's where my loss is. Maybe I don't understand these systems well enough, but I think there are going to be some concerns related to data integrity.
I agree with that.
Okay, so I'm going to move to the next slide unless you guys have any other comments here. So here, this is the create customer. And again, I mean, we are not looking at just one isolated case. We are looking at pretty much everything, right? So when you look at the customer structure, and this is my customer master, and I have certain impression of how, or expectation of how I like to see customer master. From the ERP perspective, if you are trying to accomplish the same outcome, the kind of hierarchies you are going to need, and there are like a million ERP systems, but they don't provide the same outcome as some of the mainstream ones, because they have simply flattened the layers. And that's why, we are putting a lot of these in tier 7, because we just don't believe that they will accomplish the same outcome. And there's a similar mindset here. For example, let's say if you look at the customer level. So now to your comment, Phil, related to the front end experience. So they are they have their mandatory field right now at the customer level is going to be email. Can you believe this? And 90% of the SaaS systems they treat email as the primary identifier for their customer record. And now that's a very foundational system. Even CRMs require far more hierarchy from the customer perspective. So where is that? Where are my branches? Where are my ship tos? Where are the contacts for those? Now here, let's say if you are dealing with 100 contacts in a company, you are going to create probably 100 customer records. Now, what AI can do, AI can retrieve, it can provide a report for a customer, it can provide customer 360 easily, but you are still going to have 100 records underneath, which is going to be a real concern. This is a real data concern in my mind. Unless, again, I'm missing something, you have website required. This is a very HubSpot mindset. If you look at HubSpot architecture, and that's why we don't even call HubSpot CRM anymore. We call that as marketing automation, because you will not be able to accomplish transactional CRM use cases. They get as hard as your ERP transactional use cases. So again, this is created from very SaaS mindset, from what is that? The modern application mindset. But again, this bigger companies, I would say, they will struggle when they are looking at the real customer master. The same thing goes for the vendor master as well. I mean, even vendor master side, I mean, you need the same hierarchy. And these are like fundamentals, I would say, right? You are going to have very complex rules that you are going to require in terms of the vendor master, the context, then context have correlation with the item. So all of those things are literally missing. They just don't have that. And then, at the vendor level, if you look at how they are flagging the vendors that are going to be 1099, which is just flat layer. I mean, there is no sense of hierarchy there either. And I don't think AI is going to work if they create those hierarchies, because AI native systems, they don't like hierarchy. They don't appreciate hierarchy.
Not flat enough.
Exactly. Okay, guys. So some comments here. So from the user perspective, so this is 2 months ago, I guess. So here, the AI right now isn't as impressive as the market, but better than anything. I mean, it's not necessarily a tangible comment. We don't have any meat there in terms of what the user is talking about. But users are already complaining. I mean, the users are saying that there is some sort of data quality. They don't necessarily understand the technical fundamentals, so it's going to be hard for them to articulate. But they have said that, they are saying that it's not as impressive. They are just not able to explain why it is not as impressive. I'll keep moving here. Some more comments. So here they are talking about lack of reference details in journal entry for easy tracking, no icon to easily switch between different screens. So the hierarchies that you had in ERP systems, where you need to have at least 5 layers of hierarchy, even in your screen tracking, now that is not going to be there. So I don't know how you can do your job. So that's going to be a concern as well. It works flawlessly with HubSpot data. It does, because your customer master is very well aligned with HubSpot. That's why HubSpot integration is easier. That's why Rippling integration is easier. But anything more complex data model than that would probably struggle with the integration. You can call that legacy whole day, but they are designed for a purpose. Okay, so again, the kind of systems that they are integrating right now, they have very flattened data architecture. That's why the integration is easier. And you will see that a common trend that they are integrating with those systems. They are ignoring everything else right now. Seamless integration with build.com. Again, build.com was very SaaS-centric system, so it's going to be much easier to integrate. Yeah. So there are some inventory concerns, that have been reported from the users. So I would say, I mean, do your own research and read these comments, read between the lines a little bit. But they are saying that various inventory transactions, like automatic, COGS reporting when the company uses perpetual method as their accounting policy. So they are requesting those features, but those features are going to be really hard because the model is not as scalable. In my mind, they will struggle with that. So the user is reporting, while DualEntry is a solid accounting platform, there are a few areas that could be improved. Limited integrations. Integrations, again, if they are integrating with other flatter data models, those integrations are going to be easier compared to larger competitors. The range of third-party integrations like payroll, inventory, CRM systems is somewhat narrow. But again, I mean, if you go to a real inventory system, inventory require those layers. If you don't have that, you will not get the financial operational state of the inventory. DualEntry is most user-friendly accounting platform. Obviously, it's going to be user-friendly because they have taken those shortcuts. Comparing it with QuickBooks or Xero, they are far more complicated. This is like the simplified version of those software, which is what I would say. Those that are really off for me are the money in, money out. And they have used terms such as money in, money out. Now, I don't know how accountants are going to connect with this platform, to be completely honest. I don't even know what that means. So now we need to change our universities, I guess. And we need to call this money in, money out, right? Rather than calling cash out. Right, Phil?
Good luck with that one. That's going to be difficult.
I don't even know what money means, but thank you. Okay. Okay. So here, some more comments. I think that's a repeat comment, so I'm not going to touch on that. One more comment here. Perfect fit to compete a software similar to QuickBooks, or it may above or beyond on that kind of software, but on my point of view, not on the level of ERP like NetSuite, Sage, Acumatica, Unit4, Zip, etc. And they are calling Zip as ERP, which is just fascinating. For the reason many modules are not yet available to be classified the software as an ERP environment. Again, users sort of have gut feeling that there's something missing, but they cannot explain or articulate just because they don't have as much technical visibility. They don't understand how to evaluate these things from the technical standpoint. Some key customer details such as contact information, address are not marked as required field in the database. Can you believe this? These are like fundamentals. Okay, even in CRM system, you are probably going to require, but again, you are removing all of those rules, and that's why AI loves it. You remove rules for AI, AI is awesome. You put any rules for AI, AI hates it. So that's it for the presentation. I'm going to stop sharing. I'll take some comments and then we can wrap.
Well, I think that, we've talked about this so many times in the past, but everything boils down to what the client's exact requirements are and what they're expecting in a system. But if you're looking for a state-of-the-art, almost bleeding edge accounting system, I think this looks fantastic.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, like you said, bookkeeping, accounting, it really looks amazing.
Yeah.
Ease of implementation in a SaaS space looks really amazing. The concerning area is how would they expand broader than that?
Right.
There's some real, and you really highlighted there's structural limitations here. And if you really can't migrate to a more structured database without upsetting the AI capabilities, which is the value prop, there's a self-made limitation here.
Could not agree more. And I think if you are exploring some of the other systems, for example, Odoo, QuickBooks, etc., at this point of time, I guess, this is probably going to be a much better system because you can do far more things than those systems. Shrestha, do you have any comment? Anybody else has any other follow-ups? No? Okay. Perfect. So guys, we are going to wrap. So that's it for this session. This was the second one. I don't think we are going to do third one for dual entry.
Unless they want us to.
We can do it. We can do it.
They have to call themselves a triple entry then.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, triple entry. Well, yeah. These guys move pretty fast. We'll probably need to refresh it a year, but outside of that.
Yeah, they might come with a new name. You're right.
Yeah. But one thing is certain, that ERP industry is going to change because the kind of things that they are doing, obviously they are very unique. There is a possibility that we probably don't need ERP. Why do you need ERP? I don't know. We'll find out. So that is going to be a question for all of us in the next 3, 4, 5 years. But again, if you care for AI native, if you're really excited about this is the system that you should be including as part of your evaluation. They are amazing. Investors love it. So, you should go for it. On that note, thank you so much once again for tuning in. And I'll see you in the next webinar.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the WBS Podcast. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform so you never miss an episode. For more information on growth strategies for SMBs using ERP and digital transformation, check out our community at WBS.rocks. We'll see you next time.